everyone. So as you can tell from the title of this video, I just wanted to talk about a topic that I haven't really seen a lot of resources for. It can be kind of a taboo subject, so maybe people steer clear of it for obvious reasons. But of course, knowledge is power. So the more awareness we can spread about some of these things, the more heard and validated that we can make people feel. Hopefully, the more healing can come around from that, and just generally not feeling alone in some struggles that you may be facing. Um, so, the subject of in law conflict, in law dynamics, just anything to do in the realm of that type of relationship. It's very common in the South Asian community and other communities too for there sometimes to be some struggle, power differential, conflict within that relationship. A lot of people come to therapy for struggles that they've experienced or maybe are still experiencing. But I just want to start off by saying anything in this video or any video on this channel is not a replacement for professional therapy. There is no replacement for professional therapy. That therapeutic alliance just offers something that you just can't find within an informational resource video. The second thing is what we're talking about here is more just relationship issues between in-laws and the daughter-in-law or maybe the son-in-law, whatever the dynamic may be, not talking about actual physical or emotional abuse. Of course, in those instances, the most important thing to do is to reach out to a women's shelter, reach out to a healthcare practitioner, maybe even emergency services if you deem it necessary, because there just is no if, ands, or buts when it comes to safety. So please just make yourself be aware of the resources that are available to you, and I'll try to link some stuff in the description below. Okay, so the modality that I use in my practice, it has a lot to do with understanding our basic wiring. What makes us the way we are in modern day and age is really relevant to our basic wiring that we had back at the beginning of evolution, right? Primitive ages when we were cave people. And our primary sole purpose was just to survive and advance. So what the name of the game there was self-protection. So how our minds and bodies have been wired is basically to do one of three things when we felt threatened or uneasy. Our nervous system was designed to get activated in either fight when we felt threatened or like there was an aggressor in front of us, or flight, get the heck out of there, or freeze, disassociate and play dead, just pretend it's not happening. So in modern day and age, even though we're not technically usually confronted by real life dangerous scenarios on a regular basis, sometimes emotional distress can feel like that. And it can make our nervous system perceive a threat just like if we're face to face with a bear, just like how it was back in the day as we were cave people and somebody was trying to take over our cave or take our food stock, right? And we would jump into fight, flight, freeze. That's never really gone away from our wiring. So we can very quickly switch into that primitive mindset where it starts to feel like a matter of survival, even if we're just dealing with interpersonal relationship issues and things like that. That's why it is a big deal. This topic is important to address and sometimes seek counsel over. So the number one kind of thing to understand is sometimes partners have a really tough time understanding why it's so important. Why is everyone not getting along such an issue? Why does it cause emotional distress, sometimes anxiety, depression, insomnia? It can break up families. It can break up relationships and marriages. The answer is pretty simple. It comes down to our basic human need of acceptance and belonging. So what that means is because we know that at one point we were very survival wired, that was the sole focus, And what we also know is that the people who had the highest chance of survival and advancing were the ones where there was power in numbers. They were very accepted by the community. The village took care of everyone. It was a collaboration where the sole purpose was, let's just get through each day, and so on and so forth. So when you think of things like that, it helps really make sense of why we yearn to be accepted and to belong, right? So think of why even in South Asian culture, this might be amplified, because we literally just one generation or two generations up, we were still in villages, right? We go back to India and we visit our villages. So that village mentality is very prevalent in our genes, in our DNA. So in terms of survival wiring, needing to be accepted and belong, understanding that power is in numbers, well, that village mentality is still really in our mindset. It's either subconscious or conscious, right? So then when we enter a family system where we're feeling a little bit of resistance, where we might feel like, I don't know if I'm accepted or belong here, it can really put us on our heels. It can feel like a true rejection or attack on our core identity, on our chances of survival and being. And what the result is it ends up becoming a projection of our insecurities. When I say our, I mean the younger gen, and then the older gen, which is what we can refer to as the in-laws, their insecurities are being projected and their unmet needs start getting projected. It'll make more sense as we go through the video, but just starting to really analyze and observe, what's really being triggered here? I don't really care about the he said, she said, yet it makes me feel so activated. So once we start to really break it down and unpack it, we start to understand why the little comments create rumination, why we can't sleep at night thinking about, why did they say that? Or why did they critique me that way? It becomes a personal attack for both parties. Another note is that throughout this dialogue that we're going to have here, we're not villainizing either party. We're just humanizing what's going on. We're making it make sense. And I think that's a really important distinction, because we often get looped into, I need to prove that that person is wrong and I am right. The blame game, right? Because it doesn't feel good to maybe take a look at what might be going on for ourselves and express that level of vulnerability. But at the same time, sometimes healing and moving forward does require a little bit of accountability and sorting out some of our own stuff that might be going on. Okay, that brings us to the second note. So there is the potential for, when you enter a family system, potential flaws might be highlighted. Think about like a machine. A machine might be operating just suboptimally. Maybe it has a part that is a little problematic, but it just keeps chugging along. Then you try to bring in a brand new shiny piece into the machine, and all of a sudden it starts malfunctioning because the machine is used to operating in its own way. It's learned to make adjustments and compensate for the weaker parts, this and that. So that's kind of what we can see within family systems, is potential flaws that were just kind of swept under the rug for a long time end up getting highlighted. The result? Some more fight, flight, freeze for everybody involved. Another thing to recognize is that we, younger gen, sometimes we have a little bit of hindsight bias when it comes to that comparison point of, well, in my family, it was like this, and everything was rainbows and butterflies. And all of a sudden, it's a very jarring experience when you're experiencing a different family system. Hindsight bias is when we accidentally choose to omit some of the potential negative instances of our own family system. There's this kind of phenomenon that I think a lot of people can relate to, that in the year leading up to the wedding, because the wedding is such a big thing in our culture, everything more or less kind of smooths out within the girl's family system, right? Your parental home just becomes that much more harmonious because it's just easy to just decide to put your differences aside and get along, for lack of a better way of putting it. So then a little bit of hindsight bias comes in. Another potential that is a little hard pill to swallow for the young gen, but sometimes a little bit of displacement might start happening, where certain things you see in the new family system start activating or triggering old feelings that you may not have resolved. Things like childhood trauma, unmet needs, maybe problematic behaviors within your parental family system that you haven't quite tended to or never really consciously put your focus on because it just wasn't that relevant. Well, now all of a sudden these things are very relevant because we're on our heels and we're feeling threatened. So recognizing if there's this phenomenon that we call in the psychology world transference. Are you taking feelings that actually belong for a different situation or a different person and placing them onto a new situation and a new person, so that it's not just the interaction you're having in the here and now that's activating, but it's also all the old stuff that we may have not fully healed from or tended to. A lot of weight is put on to when we finally get married and have that big grand wedding. It's supposed to be the happily ever after. It's supposed to sort out and ease any unpleasantries within us. And when we don't quite experience that, because that's life, well, it can be very catastrophic and we can start to blow things out of proportion. So those are just a few of the things to kind of start to become reflective, observative, and mindful of. Just kind of adopting a more curious mindset in terms of what are the analytics here? What are the pieces at play that might be contributing to the situation at hand? So back to fight, flight, freeze. To talk to a little bit of what potentially might be going on for the older gen, what's commonly observed, and this is not to stereotype or blanket statement, is that a lot of our parents had arranged marriages, which means that maybe in terms of love and attachment, those needs weren't quite met through the partner. So sometimes for a woman, her first healthy attachment very well may be their child. And often it's easier to securely attach to a son rather than a daughter, because maybe there's some inner child reconciliation that needs to go on for the woman before she's able to fully securely attach and embrace a daughter. It's a little bit easier because of patriarchy themes to do that with a son rather than a daughter. And that's something maybe we can unpack a little bit further in a different video. Not to say it's right or should be happening, but just what's commonly observed. So in that case, if your first real true attachment is with this precious baby boy, and then comes some odd 20 to 25 years later, this character comes in to maybe threaten that, well, that can feel again like an aggressor, like a danger, like a threat. And what do we see happen? Fight, flight, freeze. So recognizing that while we have those modes we can go into, so too does the other party. And at that point, we're really not in our rational mind. We're in that reactive, primitive, feeling threatened headspace and mentality. And at that point, maybe we're not making sound decisions. Those are just a few variables to kind of start to toy with, think about, be curious about. Maybe it's relevant, maybe it's not. But just thinking about what's going on for either party. And the main thing is, hopefully, if you take away anything from this video, it's just to feel validated. I know at one point, I tried to search high and low for some resources that made me feel like I wasn't isolated and experiencing some of the feelings I had going on just on my own. And there really aren't that many resources out there. So if anything, I hope this video makes you feel seen, heard, understood, and validated. Please reach out for counseling, mental health therapy, and support if you deem it necessary. We could all benefit from a little extra support. I had so much more to say, but I think I'm going to need to make a part 2. God bless. Take care, everyone.